All right, we are live. We are live. We're live. Thank you so much. Okay, so awesome day. Thank you all so much for joining me today on this live. This is a very special day. It's Father's Day weekend. So I really want you guys to come through with your fatherly approach to all of this. So while I introduce you to our audience, we have a few people joining us on YouTube and Facebook as well. So thank you all so much for coming. Welcome everybody to Real Men Talk at Honey Drops Foundation. And today is a very special broadcast. Normally we go live on weekdays or during the week to talk about these issues. But today we're doing a weekend special just to really bring some powerful men, more powerful than I have brought on before. Not to say that any man is less powerful, but I really love the fact that I have three amazing men who have sacrificed and given their time to be on here with me today. Awesome time. I'm really excited. My name is Dr. Oyinkansola Jinadu. I am the founder and board chairperson of the Honey Drops Foundation, and I'm super grateful for the privilege to have this platform and to grow it. This is our 9th year in existence. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are also a CAC registered NGO out of Nigeria, Africa. So we've been doing a lot of work across the globe, and then we came to this point where we truly want to make an impact in the lives of our men. While we are a foundation that advocates for teenagers, youth, and families against domestic abuse, sexual abuse, teen dating violence, and all of that, we also recognize a lot of the issues that stem from the issue of abuse with our men. So when we started having all of these conversations and asking questions like, why do we have all of these things happening? A lot of our men really did not want to be part of the conversation because of the issue of, sorry guys, I wanted to create something. I apologize. All right, I think that's good. Okay. All right, so a lot of my men did not want to get in the conversation. They wanted to be left alone. They want to deal with their issues silently, quietly, but most importantly, they did not want their faces and their voices to be recognized when it comes to social issues such as this, especially because when you talk about domestic violence, when you talk about single parenthood, when you talk about abuse in relationships, when you talk about depression, when you talk about financial pressure, all of these areas that our men have a short end of the stick. Most men feel like if I say this is a problem that I'm having, then it makes me look less of a man. And then even if I don't feel less of a man, then of course it makes it look like society will point the finger at me and tell me there is something that is wrong with me, that I'm not doing well. And that is why I am having these issues. So we were a no-go area for many years. But eventually I started to get some kickback from some people that I have personal relationships with. Some of them, I twisted their hands. I'm like, you have to come and talk about this. And they're like, Dr. O. I'm like, no, I really need you to lend your voice, even if you don't have any personal stories to share. Ironically, every single guest that I've brought on, celebrity types, they've had personal experiences, which we have discussed behind the scenes. However, society is so brutal when it comes to men. We all talk about the fact that we live in a patriarchal society, right? Men are in charge, right? And women are constantly fighting for what we call, what's it called? Female empowerment. I don't even know if all this feminine, I don't really clock into them like that, so it doesn't really come to mind. But when I look a little bit behind the scenes, I'm like, while we assume that our men are so strong and macho, a lot of our men are suffering. A lot of them suffer depression, and then you ask 9 out of 10 men. In fact, I've even asked, there was a politician that I brought on the Real Talk show last month, the commissioner for youth, and I asked him, I said, sir, would you go to therapy? He said, no. And that is the answer that I get. And I'm like, if you as a leader in our community, everyone is looking up to you and you're really just declining such a resource that could potentially help you, what do you expect other young men or other fathers or other people who look up to you to say, well, so he broke it down to me in a way that I understood, but then I still didn't agree with, right? So 9 out of 10 men would decline the resources and the help that would actually allow them to get what they need to be better, because so supposedly a man has to figure it out on his own. A man has to be strong for his family. A man has to suck it up even when it hurts, so that nobody knows that he's hurting, and he has to figure out a way to sort it out. So those are the things that we're going to talk about today. So welcome to Real Men Talk, a Father's Day special at Honey Drops Foundation with Dr. OJ. I really appreciate you guys. So my first guest today is Mr. Mark Ross. Mr. Mark Ross is an amazing coach and is a male development specialist. He is the CEO and founder of the nonprofit organization out of North Texas called the Gentleman's University. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Ross.
Hello, thank you. I appreciate you.
Awesome, awesome. My second guest today is a media veteran. He's a comedian. He's a talk show and expert. He's like called the king of talk because he's built years of his career in really mimicking what we call, the daytime talk show that we have here in the US in Nigeria, Teju Babyface talk show. And he started his career as a stand-up comedian and evolved into that area of talk. And he has dominated that space for many years as a celebrity, as a thought leader, and as a veteran media entertainer in Nigeria, and now domiciled in the United States. My own very personal friend, Mr. Teju Babyface Oyelaki. I don't want to call all your names, or should I call all the names? Should I introduce everything? Badegeshi Oyelaki. Thank you so much for coming here, sir. Welcome, welcome, my brother. I appreciate you. You're muted out, sir. You're muted out.
Yeah, I said I was just about to tell you why I had to mute it. So I have twins, as you know.
Yes, it's Father's Day. It's Father's Day.
You know that this is likely to be disrupted at some point before the end of it.
And you know what? It would not be a Father's Day show. It would not be a Father's Day show. Yeah.
Two very energetic twins who know their rights are going to give me about 20 minutes tops, and then they're going to shut this down. So just
okay. No problem. So having that in mind, we're definitely going to give you preference to go first. And we really appreciate you taking the time, because I know it's definitely a huge sacrifice, and I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And our final panelist today is Dr. Foy. He's a wonderful, wonderful father, husband. Just told us he went to drop his wife. So he would not be doing that if he was not the man that I met him to be.
Yes. So I'm still gonna fix my lights, but I'm honored to be here. Honored to be with the amazing men on here. Incredible. It's 9 p.m. in Lagos. I had to do some errands. It's Father's Day. I'm honored.
Thank you, Dr. Foy. Yes, Tochukwu Mark Foy is an amazing man. Definitely big in the area of family, big in the area of relationships, a huge mentor for men. He's always putting something out there to encourage men to not just be better fathers and husbands, but to just be better men for our society. So I have a triple thread here, men who are very passionate about manhood. So let's start from there. Barigeshi, what does manhood mean? What does it mean to the 21st century man? Because that's what we're dealing with. I don't want to approach it from our father's generation, because it's a totally different ball game today. What does manhood look like? What should it be to you as a man operating in the 21st century?
All right. Thank you. First of all, it thrills me when you call me Badigeshi, which actually is my father's name. So I am Badi Wonola, but
because I'm so like, I guess, knowing him.
I can understand why you say that, because that's how we know. I get you and I understand, but I hardly hear people call that anymore. So it thrills me. And
how would I know that I'm special to you if I don't do all the special things? So
don't worry, I take it. It tickles me, especially as this is Father's Day and he's dead. He's late now for a couple of years. So this is me saying thank you for calling me that. All right. Fatherhood. Well, we are all, as I'm sure that every man or a few men can attest to, we're all trying to figure this thing out as we go along with it. Nobody has the perfect playbook for this thing. You can only do your best, but doing your best is, so that's the question. Are you really doing your best? I was speaking just yesterday when I was talking about how people refuse to, a lot of people don't realize that when you get married, you essentially die to who you used to be. They think that it's still the same. So I know a lot of people, quite a few people, who just think that, okay, what you did was you got a wife, you got a couple of kids, so that's just an attachment or an addendum or an addition to your life as it was, and so life continues. People don't realize that once you cross that threshold of marriage, you're supposed to become an entirely different person in a manner of speaking. For example, there are things that I used to do that I can never do again. A friend was telling me not too long ago, he said that your wife, he said, your wife must really have a lock on you. She must be using voodoo. That's what he said. He said voodoo. I mean, we don't call it voodoo. We call it jazz, where we come from. He said she don't use jazz, but she must have you locked down on black magic, because the guy you used to be, I mean, you were the ladies' man, so you must really be in love with her, and she must have you on lockdown with black magic because you have changed. You don't come out. You don't do all that. I'm hearing this. You're faithful. Your fidelity. I mean, this is like night. Who is this guy? And so I'm telling him that you don't understand. It's not about my wife. I mean, I love her. Don't get me wrong, but it's not about her. It's about my understanding of the situation into which I have stepped. I am still who I am, but I am no longer who I am. I can't be this person and be that person at the same time. You don't pour new wine into old wineskins. I cannot be this and be that at the same time. I can't run. You're going to choose one. Something has to give for something. So if I'm going to enjoy this union and the kids that come with it, that person has to die. I think that is what they don't tell a lot of men when they're about to step into marriage. They paint this rosy picture. Well, it's not a rosy picture. It's just that everybody keeps asking you, so when are you going to get married? You're getting old. When are you going to get married? And nobody actually lets you know that, look, if I had to give one advice to anybody, and I tell my friends who are not married yet, they're 45, they're 44, they're 46, I tell them,
never
look,
ever been married.
Never be married. Okay. I tell them, look, guy, if you think you're not ready, as ridiculous as it sounds, do not do it. Don't do it. I tell them, look, if I could go back, and I love my wife, if I could go back, I would have waited another 3 years at the very least. I'd have been dating that woman, would have been under pressure from her family, but I've waited another 3 years before I did that. And this thing is not any joke. You are either all in or you're all out. So as far as I'm concerned, to round off my answer, fatherhood in the 21st century is fatherhood as it has always been. We think that the challenges that we face are new, but our fathers and our progenitors who were alive when we're going from the horse and carriage to the car, to the model car, also thought that the world was crazy now. And the people who were alive when we're going from the telegraph and the newspaper to the television and to flight also thought the world was changing. The world will keep changing. The tenets are just that, look, once you come into this thing, you've signed into this thing, you must be all in this thing. If you're not ready to come into this thing, then take your time. It ain't no pressure. Don't let anybody pressure you. But once you're in this thing, you're a new man. You cannot be that guy. You take it from me. Maybe one day later, you're going to get your freedom. Maybe I can't wait for this ones to go to college. I keep telling them every day, the day you go to college, I'm going to throw a party. The second part of my life has begun all over again. Don't call me. Don't write me. I'm going to give you as much money as you want, but I'm free, baby. I'm free. But until that happens, I'm all in.
Until you're ready for this thing, do not come into this thing called fatherhood and husbandhood. Oh my God, this is such an amazing. Mr. Mark Ross, take it away. What does it look like for you for being a man in this century?
I'm sure it looks a lot different than it did for my father when he was, coming up and raising his children. I don't think manhood is a monolith, nor is it a linear event. I think it's a journey. I don't think manhood is something that we master, but it's something that we continually refine, you know, as we grow older. I have a good friend of mine, and he deals in IT, and he says that there has to be an update every few years, and I would say that was a great analogy, as there does have to be an update to what your manhood, what your version of manhood is, every, you know, couple of years. What doesn't change is the responsibility of manhood. It may change as you come into fatherhood. And it may change with your responsibilities as far as when you become a husband as well. Those things will require an update as far as whatever your manhood may be at the time, or whatever you've called for it to be. So it's a continual journey. It's not something that is just a definitive, you know, answer or something that is unnuanced, because there's a lot of nuances to being a man and the things that is expected of you and how you're supposed to react to those roles and responsibilities. But manhood is a journey. It's hopefully one that you continue to learn every day, and as you learn, you teach, and that will help the next generation become better at the idea of manhood than what we are today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Ross. Dr. McFoy, are you ready with us?
Yeah, so I'm here. And I will just speak from Teju's point and the last speaker's point. Now, in the past, men were expected to be warriors. There was a part in history where men had to fight battles, had to fight wolves, had to find fire for eyes. There's a time in history where men had to be indoctrinated to war because of the reality of history. So it is so hard to be a man now because it's a new era. It's a totally new era. It's an era where, like he just spoke about, we're trying to define and refine who we are. Who are we now? Because there's no battle to be fought. There's AI. there's no werewolves to fight. There's no ice age to industrialize. There's a lot of things that we have to refine. And I love what he just said, Mr. Macross. The idea is that it's a journey, not a destination. For example, apparently my wife had like her cousin's wedding this night, and I just flew in this morning, and I have to take her here. I'm in the car doing, because I've realized that in this season, I just have to be a man of my word. And so it's a journey for everybody. But I think that as we learn, we teach and we grow. And that's where I am right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your commitment, because you could have just called out and said you had other pressing commitments, but you did not do that. So that definitely testifies to the quality of man that you are, and we don't take it lightly. So thank you so much. So another question I have for the panel is this. It's going to talk on the issue of, now we've all established manhood from our different perspectives. Mr. Macross is African-American, and Teju and Dr. Foy, they're both African, indigenous Africans. Would you say there is a difference in the responsibility of a man? I mean, because my experiences have been very, very unique. You know, I've encountered men from both spaces, right? So would you say, for you as an African-American man, what are some of the values and some of the things that really were laid down for you growing up from your family background? And of course, for Teju and Dr. McFoy, being an indigenous African, you know, growing up in that cultural space, what were some of the things that really kept you grounded and identified for you to say, this is what a man is supposed to do, this is what a man is supposed to be like? Do we have that to share?
Certainly I would say that there's a difference because of the cultural aspect of, you know, between myself and the esteemed panel. Earlier when Mr. Babyface was talking about asking guys like, hey, when are you going to get married? We don't have those type of conversations. We are not sitting around asking, you know, men, hey, when are you going to get married? Because men don't look forward to marriage the way that women do in our culture. Now, of course, we may ask that question once we are married and, you know, we are up in our 40s, 50s, and we may have a friend or two who is also of that age and still has not gotten married yet. Then we may ask that question like, man, you know, do you ever plan on getting married? And 9 times out of 10, you will probably have that person say, no, I don't plan on getting married, just because at some point you get what we call stuck in your ways, and you don't want anybody to kind of interrupt what it is that you're doing. But other than that, I would say that the role or the expectation of a man would be the same. It was very ironic that Dr. Foy mentioned about the role of manhood as far as history tells, because there is some, you know, conversations that I've had where I've also went into the history of, you know, manhood, when, you know, there are some, of course, you know, if you were in the Roman Empire, that was you were a Roman soldier, that was the epitome of masculinity. But then masculinity changed, let's say, in the Renaissance era. If you are a man who was well-spoken, if you are a man who were into the arts and into music and other creatives like such, then that was the epitome of masculinity. So masculinity does change and its definition does change, but the foundation of being a man of discipline, being a man of integrity, being a man that does provide, and being a man that does protect, that still never changes, especially when we're talking about your home, your own personal home, as well as the community. And I think we miss that a lot of times, is that manhood, the way that a man affects his community as well. Anytime when all of my children are grown and out of the house now, but anytime that when my children were younger, anytime I had a young man, young lady, or whoever come to visit in my home, then at that point they were my child, and I treated them, you know, as such. So I maintained a level of expectation even for the children who were not mine. But if they are of my community, then I consider them mine. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what we are missing as far as in the African-American culture, is that we've kind of stepped away from that, and we separate ourselves from the youth and only concern ourselves with those who are binded to us by relationship or blood.
I love that, because it's, you know, Nigeria, growing up in Nigeria and Africa is like you're everyone's child. If you did something wrong down the street, before you got home, you would have been corrected, whooped, even before you got to your parents. And you best believe, if that was the case, you get home, you're going to get a double dose of all of that. There was no questions asked. So I really needed to understand, you know, just the role of man. Teju and Dr. Foy, would you guys like to chime in on that?
No, he said it perfectly. I would just like to say that they call me babyface, but you're the babyface. All your kids are out of the house and you look like this. I mean, what, you had kids when you were 10?
Thank you. Yes, all of my kids are out of the house. I have 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl.
Whoa. I guess it's the definition of black don't crack.
Wow.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Foy. All right, let's move on quickly. Definitely in a respect for time. So there's a lot of men struggling with life, and I can break it down into different areas of life that men struggle with. And it's not a classification of socioeconomic status where the ones that are more privileged or have more access don't struggle with these things, because we hear in the news every day how a lot of well-established, successful, they have everything that people are still like praying for and looking up to them for, and all of a sudden we hear cases of suicide, we hear cases of extreme depression, we hear so many things happening to our men. So what would you say to someone, a guy, a man, who is currently going through that? But while that is the situation and the case, we still have it where most men, like I said, 9 out of 10 times, will turn down the help that could be prescribed, such as therapy, such as psychological help and things like that they could take advantage of, and they just want to man it up and man through it. What would you say to men like that? And is that something that you could speak on, as far as maybe as an experience that you might have gone through, without, of course, sharing your personal business, just looking at it from a very empathetic perspective?
So as a medical doctor, I spent some part of my life in mental health. And it's funny how it's called mental health, men, but we don't really do therapy. And the reason why is because of two things. Number one is trauma. So trauma, I define are the bad things that happen to you and the good things that didn't happen for you. So the bad things that happen to you, the consequence, but there are also good things, dreams, desires. Most men have aspirations that didn't happen, and it also births trauma. A lot of men deal with something called, and I'll speak as African men, we deal with something called ego, and it's such a dangerous thing because instead of us to have gravitas, have substance, most African men have ego. Ego is fed by culture, by tradition, by fallacy, by lies. Ego is fed by emotions, and ego is fed by suppressed emotions. As a person, I grew up. I'm the first son of an Igbo man. I'm medical, so I had to read medicine in school. So he's a doctor. So I saw a lot of African Nigerian men suppress emotion, highly traumatized, and all that. Now, for this climate, so I'll speak on this climate in Nigeria and Africa. For this climate, three things tend to, well, I won't say help, but pacify mental health. One is religion. People use church to escape. They use God to escape, which is not bad, but it doesn't heal the roots. Two is work. People use work to escape. It doesn't really heal the roots. Third, I'll add pleasure, football, sex, alcohol, but it doesn't really heal the roots. I've learned that there are just a few ways men can do it. Number one is community. Most men, when they share and you don't handle it well, they won't share it again. So communities can help a man. So one is community. Two is a phenomenal spouse. And I say phenomenal spouse in the sense of a lady who can manage, I won't say manage because that's the wrong word, who can cope with who is not like you but for you. She's not like you, but she's for you. She's ready to stay with you through it all. And finally, I'll say that gradually in this climate, a few men are opening up in Nigeria. That's the truth. A few men. I had a mental health thing for men early this year. A few men opened up. But in all, I realized that it's still a journey for most men. And let's see how it goes. And this is just my sincere take.
Thank you, Dr. Foy.
I just like to say for men, and you alluded to that in the question, there are the suicides, there are the depressions. There's also the fact that apart from the biological makeup of the male versus the female, men always seem to expire first, even though usually men will be older than their wives, but they seem to die long before their wives. A man who is 8 years older than his wife will not die 8 years before she does. He might die 20 years before, and so on and so forth. So men have traditionally carried the weight. So I heard someone say something that I thought was very apt. It seemed to be a contra-wise counsel, but I really liked it. He said that men who are responsible and who work hard for their families should learn to be more selfish. When you're a man who is invested in your family, you find that you don't think of yourself. You hardly buy yourself stuff. You're wearing the same boxers from 4 years ago. You're wearing the same pair of shoes from 5 years ago. I mean, it's always about them. And then you walk and you walk and you walk, and then you expire someday. Instead, at some point, you must learn to be more selfish, as crazy as that sounds. You must do for you. You will find that something begins to happen as you grow, because you've taken on the the toga and the mindset of responsibility, you will find that you no longer have so many friends. If you see a man who has two good friends, you're seeing a rare man. Two good friends whom you can call up and they can join, you're seeing a rare man. Most men don't even have one. So they have acquaintances, but they really don't have friends. They don't have that soul buddy. Women, on the other hand, check out your wife. She's on the phone with Lucy and Sheila and Tokwe and Tola and all of that. So you find invariably that as men grow, their wives become their best friends. And then the woman has her own best friends. So she's not quite invested in it as you are. Right. But now you don't have friends because you spend all that time hustling and trying to make the money for the family, and you severed all those relationships, right? So now I find that I'm beginning to call my guys from high school, and it's ridiculous just how much we've lost touch. I mean, these were my best friends when we were boys. I haven't spoken to some of them in years. They haven't spoken to me in years. We're all hustling, you know. So here's the thing: as a man, be tactically and strategically selfish. Sometimes just don't go take care of the baby. Sometimes just go. Look, I got to a condition where I couldn't even travel out of the house, go out of state for more than a few days. I'd be all, what's up with the family? The wife would call me. The light in the bedroom went out, and then this happened, and all of that. And I just had to get to the point where I'm like, you know what? Deal with it, or get on the phone, get on Google, call somebody. All right? I ain't coming back till next week. The sky's not going to fall. You're not going to die. Let me be me. But this advice is only for responsible men, okay? If you're not a responsible man, I mean, there's no how you are even on this call in the first place. I guess I'm speaking to only responsible people.
I was just gonna say that. Who you think you're talking to? You know, we're doing this Father's Day special because we really want to have a call to action to let our men rise up to the occasion, because you know I mean, every gender has its issues, but I've been called to just really focusing on the men and the youth. And I really want to be able to demonstrate that, come on now, no matter how bad it looks like, no matter what, there are still a few good men. And we are always going to locate those few good men, bring them on our platform, and let them share and let them bring you something valuable. And you said something, it's okay for men to be selfish, but there's a thin line between that, because most of our viewers will say, well, Dr. O, men are selfish now. And that's because the general population of men that are being dealt with in this generation are selfish anyways, to the point where responsibility is not priority. So I love the fact that you said that, you know, good men who are already doing the needful should also be able to take time for themselves. So it's very important. Dr.
And that's
Ford,
and
yes.
to kind of just piggyback on what you said about being selfish, I've coached several men who I have encouraged myself to be selfish, to think of yourself as far as in a self-care type of way. So when you say that men are selfish now, and you know, in this day and age, what kind of selfish is that? Is that selfish for just the pleasurable things, selfish to a point to where you're completely abandoning your responsibility for anyone else? But I don't promote that type of selfish. The selfish that I ask these gentlemen to take on is one that, because you can't give 100% if you don't have 100%. So there's a saying that you can't pour out into the community if you're empty yourself. So you got to be able to take some time away to fill yourself up with those things that are good, not just for yourself, but beneficial for those that are around you. And speaking to the mental health aspect, of course, I don't know all of the answers, but I am fortunate enough to be very close friends with a few therapists. And I have my own thoughts on what we can do so that men can walk into therapy a lot more than they are now, so they will be less rejectful of it. And the first thing that I think that we should do is that a therapist should be assigned to every middle and high school in America, period. That makes therapy much more accessible, and it makes it much more familiar to everybody, so it doesn't seem like something foreign or that something is quote unquote wrong with you when you go to see a therapist. Secondly, most therapists are women. It's hard for some men to sit down and spill to a woman all of his insecurities, all of his vulnerabilities, so forth and so on. So sometimes we need representation there, as in the form of another man, someone who will really understand what it's like to walk out these footsteps every day in life. So those just couple of things right there, I believe, would make a huge difference as far as the outlook that men have on therapy.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So more men, going to therapy, going to counseling, get your license in, and let's help our men. I don't really know how that's going to work. Dr. Foy, any thoughts on that? Maybe get some of your colleagues to search wings.
So I echo everything he just said. The word selfish is such a dangerous word. So I will use self-care. So I echo everything you said. For men in therapy, I understand that vulnerability is not a thing that most men are trained to be. But I think that also fatherhood is key right now. I think that the fathers now have to become therapists to their sons. And I mean, it's like we have to train our sons deliberately in this era to be vulnerable, to be open, and to do a lot more. It's gonna be wild because of how interconnected we are. We are in the social media world. So if you don't raise your sons now, train them, be with them, you might outsource that to the internet, to social media, and that's such a dangerous place. So I agree, we need more male therapists, but we need more fathers to raise their sons. We need that too. Thank you.
Indeed.
It's amazing you say we need more fathers to raise their sons. But the reason I believe we found ourselves in this loop is because a lot of our fathers did not raise our men. So now, if what they did not get from their fathers, of course, and our fathers can easily say, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. I really never like to look back to our older generation and say, look at what you did, because I believe they did the best they could with what they had access to at the time. But it's up to us. And I look at us, I say millennials, who are stuck right in the middle of the baby boomers and the generation XYZ. We are the ones that are sort of having to hold on to that mantle to say, how do we pull? Because we now, like with my parents, I'm teaching them a lot of things, and they're so different from the parents I had growing up. Now they're more open to communication. Now I'll call my dad and he'll be like, oh, love you. And he'll be like, I love you too. And I'm like, whoa, okay. That was a thing that was never a thing growing up. But now, because I know I've kind of indoctrinated them, and then I'm in between now, I have to also try to pass it on to my children. So now you say a lot of men have to raise their sons. How do they get access to what they don't already have? Which is one of the reasons why we have this panel. So any ideas on how men can really begin to access the fundamental tools, not just for therapy, not just for mental health, but to really for them understanding what it takes to be a man? Because when you count 10 men, maybe 2 are responsible in more of an overarching relativity of fathering, husbandry, financial, societal, everything. When you look at men holistically, it's very rare for you to get good stuff. And I'm not saying it's not rare for women, but again, let's remember that we are all about the men on this platform. So that's our primary focus. So how can our men begin to teach and mentor the kids? They need to, but they don't have it. So where do they get it?
Usually, if I will say this, most times, especially for my generation, we have given what we did not receive as youth. That's usually where a lot of what you become comes from. So you can either you can learn from what you have, and you can also learn from what you do not have. And a lot of times I know that men that I know are fathering from a place of what I did not have. Now that, and I've had a conversation with my oldest son some time back, and I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you that I was fathering from the seat of my pants, right? Because not that my father was not, or he chose not to be there, but he was not allowed to be there. If I'm being honest, he was not allowed to be there. So I didn't really get the type of relationship that I wanted with my father until I was an adult. And I say adult, like barely, like 20, 21 years old, when I was able to form my own relationship with my father. And just as you said, when we talk, we don't want to look back and say, look at what you did, because we need to look at that from a place of grace, you know, and give our parents grace, understanding what it is when they were, you know, youth. Because my father had me, I am his oldest child. He had me when he was 19. Having been 19 and even having fathered some 19-year-olds, you understand how immature that he was at the age that he brought life into the world. So it allows me to extend grace towards him. So what we need is, we need those fathers to be involved, right? I always say it takes 2 generations to raise 1 generation. And that is where we are lacking, at least in my community, in a lot of areas. So as a father, you need yourself and you need your father to help you with your son, so that he's not just hearing the same thing from the one source all of the time. Even if you have a very solid foundation of friends, or you have an uncle who is, you know, a very responsible man, as many men as you can get to be involved in raising a boy, you should do so that they can understand and they can have several different vignettes of what masculinity and manhood looks like.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ross.
You're
So
welcome.
I guess that's what the Gentleman's University is doing right now.
That is what we are attempting to do, is to become one of those resources for parents, right? Because I'm also an author, an actual published author, and I co-authored a book called A Father's Love, and that's available right now via Amazon. Cheap plug right there. And Gentleman's University has become another resource for not just the fathers, but for anyone who loves these young men coming up and understands that they need as many resources as possible. And what we do is we try to take them and we show them and introduce them to manhood, because I think a lot of these young men don't understand the responsibility that comes with manhood. And I say don't understand it to a point to where they take it lightly. They take fatherhood very lightly. They take being a husband very lightly, and they don't understand the responsibility that you undertake when you become a father, the responsibility that you undertake when you become a husband. And so the days of the nice Corvettes and living in your one studio apartment are over, and that you need to be able to provide for your family, that you need to be able to, of course, protect, that you also need to be able to instruct and guide. So you have to do all of those things with some type of solid foundation, and you don't know what you don't know. So if you're a young father, like mine was, 19 years old, 22 years old, or whatever, you're going to need some resources to draw from. And hopefully you have those solid men around you. And I'm able to kind of hit that from both sides of the bubble, meaning that I try to be preventative in my Gentleman's University, and I am also being addressing it from an area where I deal with men who have kind of not met the mark in my coaching business as well. So I try to do everything that I can on my end, and I'm not saying that I have it mastered, because as I said before, no one does. But fortunately, I've been surrounded, especially in the last 20 years of my life, by solid individuals. I've also done my own research, my own reading, and things like that. And I've lived, and that in itself is learning.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ross.
Yeah, if I can answer
Yes,
the
sir.
question you asked, how does which is essentially how does a man who didn't get the type of resource in terms of loving,
Upbringing.
direction, and all that from his own father, how does he pass that on to his own son? I believe that was the essence of the question. Yeah.
Yes, yes. How do we get more men? Of course, yes, sir. That's
Okay.
the essence of the question. How do we get more men who can really be accountable just like you are? Because I mean, for me to have chosen this panel, trust me, it wasn't an easy fit. And it
Well,
shouldn't be so because I know so many men. So how come not every man can sit here and have this conversation?
thank you. But I think it's a matter of intent, or it's a matter of wanting to do it. As we all know, some of the worst men have come from the best fathers, and some of the best men have come from the worst fathers. I know friends. I'm thinking of a friend now who came from probably the worst narcissist that ever walked the face of the earth in terms of a parent. And ironically, perhaps because of that, he has doubled down on the way he raises his kids. I don't know a more loving father than he, which is ironic because he came from so much pain. He has gone in the exact opposite direction. So it's not always linear. It's not always that when a person comes from good stock, then he turns out to be good, or vice versa. When a person comes from bad stock, then he turns out to be bad. It's a question of intent and the things you go through personally yourself. I mean, what do you say of men whose fathers were not even there? Their fathers either left or their fathers died, and yet these men are some of the most responsible citizens in society. So as much as we like to lay a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of our forebears and our progenitors, there's a lot of responsibility with the man. It is you to whom we must look. I ask people, do you know I have little recollection? I do know because I met him and he was a great guy. I have some recollection of my grandfather, but I have none of the man that bore him. I have none of my great grandfather. But I'm even lucky. My father died before my kids were born. So they have no recollection of the man that bore me. They have no recollection of their grandfather. So there is no way that I'm able to make sense. If I'm a terrible father, they're never going to look at the man that bore me and, place the bulk at his feet, or the responsibility or the lack of care. It all comes down to me.
Right.
So it's the man. I empathize or I sympathize with whatever a man did not get, right? But the bulk stops on your table. And let's be clear, even when you have the best father, your father is not going to teach you everything. Your father too is winging it. He's also winging it as it goes along. I like what Dr. Barry said. He's playing this thing by the seat of his pants, which is the best we all can do. You're just playing this thing. What guides you in the end is your intent. Do you intend to be responsible for these kids and this family? Once you have that at the back of your mind, you're going to be fine.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is going to be, as we begin to round up this conversation, first of all, I want to say thank you. You guys have been an amazing, amazing panel, and so much value has been had. And I'm going to definitely replay this video over and over and chop up some vital points to really throw into our audience on all platforms. But here is one question that I have for everyone. When a man is unable or refusing to communicate, how does the society, the family around that man, how are they supposed to help or sort of be able to offer support to that man? Because communication is a big thing that I hear from a lot of our audiences talking about. Men just don't know how to communicate. They don't communicate. When they don't communicate, how do we know what they're thinking? How can we help? So yes, when a man does not communicate or does not know how to, then what happens next?
I think it's a really hard situation, because of two things. One is that in most settings, men are leaders. They're meant to be the one driving the. It's just I'm not saying that is the way it should always be, But in most settings, men are the ones driving the steering. So if there's no communication, where's the direction? That's number one. Number two is that 94% of what is said is not with our mouths. It's with
Exactly.
body language. Yeah. It's with body language, is with tone, it's with expression. So if there's still no communication there, then it's such a tough place to be. I would say that for those for women here or those listening, if you can observe his body language, his tone, and all that, that might help. But if there's no signal coming out, honestly, I don't have much to add to that. Now, for men that don't communicate, I would say two things. Number one, I'll say that communication is the lifeline of everything. Literally, is the oxygen, is of everything. So I think you can unlearn it and learn how to communicate. Number two, I'll say that it is not only about what you say, but it's how you say it, is when you say it. I love what he said. Before he said is the intent. I would say the intention and the attention of a man is the key to his success. So I would say that for those who don't speak more, who don't speak much, who don't communicate, the little you say, please add so much energy towards it so it goes far. But for those who don't give any at all, honestly, it's such a bad place and bad thing to be in. And I apologize for all men that do that. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. Apology accepted. Apology accepted, because a lady said something to me. She said, well, if she's not able to understand or get any type of communication from her spouse, then she's unable to really be the helper that she was created to be. So that's really one significant thing that I really just want to throw out there, that if anyone is going to be anything to a man, whether as a son, a daughter, a spouse, or significant other, a partner, we have to know what's going on in order to be able to give that feedback. So I'll let the rest of the panel address the communication issue, and then we're going to start to round off today's panel.
As far as communication, I would say that it's not that we don't communicate. I'm sure, especially if you're married, that man communicated at some point in time, or else you wouldn't be married. The one thing, especially for the spouse, is you have to ask yourself, was there ever a time that this man communicated something to me and I disregarded it, or I did not give it the level of attention that it deserved? Because once a man reveals himself and opens himself up like that to you, and he doesn't get what he believes is a proper response in return, he'll never do it again. Secondly, and this kind of piggybacks on what Dr. Foy was saying, we communicate through our actions. You know, a lot of times we're not going to communicate how great we're doing as far as providing, but when we get up every morning and we go do whatever it is, take on the world in whatever aspect that we take it on, so that we can be good providers, protectors, so forth and so on, the action of doing so is our way of communicating love to a woman, right? Love, women need to be communicated to in a manner of emotion. Men need to be communicated to in a manner of respect and appreciation, right? If we are doing, if those things are communicated to us, then we will be more apt to communicate reciprocally in a way that you would want us to also, communicate. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll end it here, is men don't read minds. If there's a specific way that you would like for us to communicate, you should communicate that. because it's just like, what is it? Everyone talks about their love language, right? So if communication is something that is very important to you and you want to hear certain things come from this man, then you communicate that to him. Hey, look, baby, I appreciate you. You know, I respect you, especially for all of the things that you do to provide us the lifestyle that you do. You know, the way that you deal with the children, I appreciate all of those things, but I would like to be communicated to verbally. I would like for you to tell me that I'm, looking beautiful today every now and then. I would like for you to verbally tell me that you love me, so forth and so on. Because if you are expecting without accepting, then you're going to you're going to be upset, and we're not even going to understand why you're upset, because you didn't tell us or give us a reason to understand.
That's a whole nother topic.
Look, but those things are what's necessary for communication to flow freely in a way that is accepting, wanted, or needed from anyone in the immediate household.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Teju, just your chime in on communication.
Oh, I mean, they covered it all. I couldn't add a single thing. Perfect.
All right, awesome. So as we close up today, Dr. Foy is here live. All right, so finally, gentlemen, thank you so much once again. But I want you guys, before we leave, each of you give us 5 things that have contributed to your success as a man in whatever capacity. If you want to go the spiritual, if you want to talk about anything, all 5 areas, whatever areas that you have really experienced success in your manhood journey, fatherhood journey, and just as we celebrate Father's Day, what are 5 things that you would say has contributed to the man that you are today?
Since I'm the
Okay.
youngest, let the youngest start.
Dr. Foy. Oh yeah, no, yeah, go.
I'll say that 1 is mentorship. I've been under good mentors. 2 is I'm not pursuing a destination. I'm in the journey, so I'm just journeying step by step. Number 3 is I married a woman who has been forgiven and has stayed through with me in my self-discovery. Number 4, I'll say my kids changed my life. My girls changed my life. So children can help you become a better. I never wanted to be the father that was the daddy's issue father. So no. And number 5, my faith. I think I can't deny that there's a place for the Holy Spirit and all that in Holy Spirit prayers and just all that in my journey. That's my 5.
Amazing. Thank you, sir. All right. In no particular order.
Okay, well, I'll say that for me, number 1 is of course the Most High God. That is definitely priority or key for me becoming the man that I am today. Secondly is my wife. I've been with my wife longer than I've been with my mother. So we kind of she has a great effect on me. 3, I would also say my children, because I did allow my children free space sometimes to say, where's daddy getting it wrong at? And they were very happy to tell me where I was getting it wrong at. So, a lot of that, falls on them. 4 is, of course, I would also say just having good men around me, good men that are, that I could look to get information from, that I could just, go to if I'm having a bad day, or if things are just getting completely out of control, that I could, go to for some assistance and for some help and direction. And last but not least, I would say having curated the relationship with my own father definitely has helped me as well.
All right. Last but not the least, Mr. Teju.
Okay. So I wanted to speak first to lay the foundation for breaking protocol, because I'm not sure I'm going to come up with 5. I can only tell you what I think has been most impactful. At the core of my being is the belief that transitions are not only a necessary part of life, they're indelible. It's in the sense that if you don't die to certain stages, and now we've come full circle, that's exactly what I said first. You have to die to who you are or who you used to be to go to the next stage. And somehow I've always had the grace for that. I've never been afraid to walk away from who I am at any point in time to be who I could be next. It's never been a problem for me. Now, I know that some of that, now that I'm old, I know that some of that was born out of some sort of arrogance of youth, so I just jump out and all of that. But that's it for me. The willingness to always be able to sacrifice, to let the kernel of wheat or the grain of corn that is me be planted and to die so that it can bring forth much more. The second thing, if I had to say something, is I'd give it to, mentoring on some level. Now I am mentored less now because I believe that at a certain point in every man's life, you must be able to stand on your own 2 feet. In fact, I believe that is why 2 of my favorite sayings in the world are 2 sayings that I believe are 2 sides of the same coin. A fool at 40 is a fool forever. Life begins at 40. I believe that circa when you're 40, give or take a few years, you should have taken enough advice, right? You should have counseled enough to stand on your own. It's not as if you wouldn't take advice now and again, but you should have run through the mill of advisors through your teens, 20s, and 30s, so that by the time you're circa 40, as a man, you should stand in the mindset that I would rather be wrong in my own decisions than to be right on somebody else's decisions. Otherwise, people are going to give you all sorts of advice that are going to ruin your life, because guess what? Everybody is winging it. Even your mentor is winging it. Nobody knows it all. And I find that there are people who pretend as if they know it all. You will soon find that some of the people you respect the most make mistakes as well. So them are the 2 things. Never be afraid to die to who you used to be so that you can be a better man. If you don't let it go, you're not going to get it back. If you let it go, you're going to get it back with good intentions. Always die to be reborn. And secondly, have mentors, but after a while, let go of them and become your own man, even when you're not sure. You'll be fine. It's always about the intent. You'll be fine.
Amazing, amazing time, guys. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know there is no studio audience, but there are people watching on YouTube, and this video will be replayed over and over because so much value was given today. Thank you so much, Mr. Macross. Thank you so much, Teju, Babyface, King of Talk. Dr. McFoy, Tochukwu, thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you, but I want to say this. Happy Father's Day. To being amazing fathers in our community, to be role models, to be mentors, to be all that you are to all of the people that you serve. You all serve so many people that you don't even know, you don't ever come in contact with. And that is credence to the value that you have created in yourself and the men that you are. So thank you all for standing tall. I celebrate you all today, Father's Day in Nigeria, and then Father's Day in a couple of hours here in the US. Thank you for coming on Real Talk at Honey Drops Foundation. I truly am honored and privileged to have each and every one of you share this time and space with me. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been Real Talk. It's a special Father's Day broadcast, and I really do hope that you all have found a lot of value in the conversations that we've had today with our audience. So guys, make sure you go to the website. We are definitely on a mission to bring a lot to our youth, our teenagers, help elevate, empower, and educate them to live beyond teen dating violence, domestic and sexual violence. But most importantly, we are also on a mission to create a platform for our men to find a safe place to get the help that they need, a safe place to get the help that they need in every social issue that life throws at them. So we are for the men, men against abuse, and we are for the youth, teen dating violence awareness. Thank you all for everything. My name is Dr. Oyinkansola Jinadu. Such a pleasure to be the founder and board chairperson of this organization. And until next time, guys, I will see you once again at Real Men Talk at Honey Drops Foundation. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
If I do this, balloons will come. I think if I have this gesture on my computer, if I do.
Oh, yeah. If you do this, balloons will come. Pop the balloons. All right. Thank you, guys.